ለመማር ወደ ትምህርት ተቋም መሄድ ግድ አይደለም። ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ
ራሳችሁን ከኮሮና ቫይረስ ወረርሽኝ እየጠበቃችሁ በቤታችሁ ወይም በተመቻችሁ ቦታ በኢንተርኔት አማካኝነት በኦንላይን ትምህርታችሁን መከታተል ትችላላችሁ።
ካናዳ ከሚገኘው ኢንተርናሽናል ኤር ትራንስፖርት አሶሲዬሽን አያታና ከእንግሊዙ ኢንስቲትዩት ኦፍ ኮመርሻል ማኔጅመንት ICM ጋር በመተባበር የሚሰጡ ትምህርቶችን ተከታትላችሁ በ6 ወር ጊዜ በዓለም አቀፍ ደረጃ ተቀባይነት ያለውን የስልጠና ማስረጃ ባለቤት መሆን ይቻላል።
ልምድ ባላቸው መምህራን እየተማራችሁ ጥያቄና መልስ የክፍል ስራዎች ፈተና መፈተን ክፍል ውስጥ እንዳላችሁት አይነት በኦንላይን ባላችሁበት ቦታ ከናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ
የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ
If you remember, we tried to see determinants of foreign policy last time. We tried to mention determinants can be divided into external determinants and internal determinants. It means countries, they craft the foreign policy in consideration of these external and internal factors. Under the external factor, by the way, today, by any means, I will send you the PowerPoint from revised actually from chapter 1 to chapter 3, and then the remaining will be a matter of two classes. Within the coming 2 classes, I expect we finish the course. When it comes to the external determinants is composed of the reaction of other states, where we are really designing our policy options. Then we need to, countries are also considering the reactions of other states. This is still the external determinant, and even the world, how they are responding to the proposed policy. So the external determinants are classified into these 5 major groups, whereas the internal determinants, they are classified around to 12, but I tried to summarize it into 10. One is the historical influence that the country has, the size and geography of the nation or states, and the natural resources, endowments, and even accessibility. You can say a lot. The economic development, the industrial development, military power, population, good governance, and leadership issues in the political organizations, and even the quality of diplomacy. It's really to mean this one. So what is the historical influence? I tried to make the handout somehow more like wordy, because it's just to minimize your effort so that you can have adequate reading rather than stretching your time and energy by getting from this book or that book. I try to make some adequate amount of notes on this one. So please, really, it's really a self-teaching, almost a self-teaching or a self-explanatory handout. It's not like PowerPoints that I used to provide in the conventional class, because we are on now on an online and interactive class. I have to help my students through some detailed notes. So when you say historical influence, it means the foreign policy of a country is to a large extent, especially its legacy of its history. Legacy of its history means, I think we have to unmute. Those of you who didn't unmute, you need to unmute. I think all of you have unmuted already. Yes. Who has? Okay, let me unmute all of you. Let me mute all of you. I think now it will be very fine. So what I'm saying here is, fine. So the external determinants, the first one is the historical influence. The foreign policy of a country's historical influence means the legal history or the legacy it has. Normally, every country has its own historical trajectory. Maybe it is historical, purely historical, or even it's purely geographic configuration or like that. And then even the cultural and historical traditions normally go a long way. in molding means in shaping the foreign policy of really a state, the cultural setup, the historical conditions that the country has is passing on. Therefore, this is one of the area of difference among the determinants of foreign policy. Even the size and the geography of the country, even the natural resources or the endowments, um, even the economic development. So you can read it, even the level of industrial development. A very example is like the USA, Russia, Japan, they are really well mentioned. Even the military capacity, we call it the military power. A state possessing somehow sufficient military strength has a greater bargaining power or initiative in the international area so that it can have a better position, especially if it has somehow some allies or some group that can really accept its dominance in terms of military. Even population really plays a great role, not only just the number, but also how resourceful that population generally calculated from the human capital perspective. And then China could be a very good example. So determinants means a country with a larger population and a larger educated population and a country with a smaller uneducated population. They cannot have the same foreign policy. For example, you can compare Germany. I do not have actually. It's out of the note that I have here. You can compare, for example, what Germany has compared to. I mean, compared to other countries in any case. So what I want to say in this case is I wanted to really share you some of the points that I am trying to address. On this regard, let me give you one important note. For instance, the comparison between Germany and Ethiopia, I tried to show you. I hope maybe in some of the lectures that I have some time ago, population, even the structure, the population structure that countries have still plays a dominant role. If you see the population structure of some developing, even developing countries, definitely they don't have the same structure, and definitely their policy, even leave alone the international policy, even the domestic policy is totally different. You can see this, for example, if you see the population structure of most of the developing countries like Ethiopia, somehow very huge youth population. We can say that almost 1/3 of the Ethiopian population is within the age of 10, I can say, from 0 to 10, you can see. For example, if you compare the population of this country, both male side and female side, with the age of this, with the Germany, definitely these two will not have the same population for the same international policy, trade, foreign policy. For example, Ethiopia may want to promote the export of knowledge and human skill, whereas Germany may want to import from that side. So this really is, and this decision has its own effect on other international relation policies, by the way. A country which tries to seek market for its population outside of its geographic domain, and a country that tries to attract or learn international expertise, they don't have that. So the effect is not only on population-related policy, but also on other foreign policies. You can see that at this time, if you see the population of Ethiopia from 0 to 4, we have about 17 million, we can say like 17 ሚሊዮን አካባቢ ያለው ህዝባችን ከ0 እስከ 4 ዓመት ባለው ነው። ጀርመንን ብንወስድ ከ0 እስከ 4 ያለው ህዝብ ከ3.2 አይበልጥም ማለት ነው። So in terms of 0 to 4 age people, Ethiopia is almost 4 times larger than. So you can predict it, what will happen after 10 years. So the design of foreign policy should consider all these things from this perspective. That's what I wanted to really show you. So population really matters. So what I am stressing is not only the number of population that the country has, but also the demographic structure that that country has also really matters. So you need to consider it from this perspective. That is the interest that I have in relation to this issue. So as much as we can, yeah, this is what I wanted to share you anyway. This is population. So population is an important, and really a practical and tangible variable that nations are trying to consider. The other thing is the practice and the nomenclature, as well as the traditions they have related to good governance and leadership. So they can really the level of good governance and the amount of leadership, especially how leadership is very productive and transformational, totally different from a leadership approach. That's what called the autocratic leadership approach. They have their own implications on the types of foreign. So internal determinants. So the remaining two internal determinants are, they can be expressed as political organizations and the quality of diplomacy, the diplomatic cultures I have, and the political organizations I have. These are some of the internal determinants that they can see. In this chapter is, if you remember, the first one is the actors. Who are the actors? Under chapter 3, we try to see what are the actors of foreign policy making, how they are really dealing with it, and like that. Foreign policy actors. So this, the second important concept, or the second important issue that we'll discuss in chapter 3 is what are really the important strategies, and then tools that are helpful to the crafting and then running of foreign policy. So foreign policy strategy. When you say strategy, it is a tactic, or say a maneuvering that countries try to use it. So when you say foreign policy strategy, in international relations language, we call it doctrine, like doctrine. What is the foreign policy doctrine they have? So when you say doctrine, it means the organized statements of goals. It is organized statements of goals. Okay, Kedus, your phone is always not muted, so I have to mute you. So it means the foreign policy strategies and tools. So it's a doctrine. When we say doctrine, it is organized statements of goals and beliefs that political leaders formulate and intend to employ to achieve these goals. This is really what they call it, a foreign policy strategy or a foreign policy doctrine. Normally, a doctrine is a well-crafted principle of government policy that are mainly expressed in foreign or even military affairs, or even the group of beliefs or set of beliefs that are held and taught by an individual or political group. This is what they call the doctrine. So a very good example is indicated even in their foreign, so you can really check it. Similarly, some Latin American countries who were being ruled by military dictators like Chile, they decided on an activist foreign policy based on what they call it diplomacy for development. So their diplomacy, so that development comes through the intervention and then modular or stated conduct of the external supporters and allies. And then the hope that Chile has is that this will help the country to somehow resolve its structural constraints of size as well as geographic location. And therefore, finally, it permits the governments of the country to hasten or develop a niche as a regional. Niche means something that's existed in between but not yet exploited. So it makes like honest broker in the international affairs, like representing some parts of Latin America. So this is their doctrine. You can see the doctrine what the South African has and the doctrine that the Chile has. This is what they call it their principle, their state principles in entering into international relations. So what are really the foreign policy tools normally? Foreign policy, almost all countries have three kinds of foreign policy tools. We have seen the foreign policy strategy, by the way. So this is some of the strategies. This is just it's kind of adaptable. But when it comes to foreign policy, almost all countries we can say their foreign policy can be tools. Their tool can be classified into three main kinds. One tool is what you call it stick. Stick. The other is what you call it carrot. A stick is normally referring to threats by creating a kind of threat to other countries who may not be aligned to the country of interest. Then they can have that stick. So stick could be an interesting area or an interesting issue to deal with foreign policy matters, so that can be considered as a tool. The other is called the carrot.
በትምህርት ከፍ ብሎ መብረር ይቻላል። ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ ከከፍተኛ ትምህርት አግባብነትና ጥራት ኤጀንሲ ሙሉ ዕውቅናን ባገኘንባቸው በማስተርስ ዲግሪ ኤምቢኤ በስትራቴጂክ ማኔጅመንት፣ ኤምቢኤ በባንኪንግ እና ፋይናንስ፣ ኤምቢኤ በቢዝነስ ሊደርሺፕ፣ ኤምቢኤ በሪስክና ኢንሹራንስ፣ ኤምኤስሲ በኢንተርናሽናል ትሬድ እና ኢኮኖሚክስ ዘርፎች በእውቀት ለመቅረጽ የበቁ ፕሮፌሰሮቻችን አረንጓዴ መብራታቸውን አብርተዋል። በነገራችን ላይ በኬንያ ሀገር ከሚገኙ ስመጥር ዩኒቨርሲቲዎች በሚመጡ ፕሮፌሰሮች የትኩረት መስክ ትምህርቶቹ መሰጠታቸው ልዩ ያደርገናል። በምርጥ የትምህርት ስርዓት የተገነባው ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ በመጀመሪያ ዲግሪ በአቪዬሽን ማኔጅመንት፣ በሆቴል ማኔጅመንት፣ በአካውንቲንግ እና ፋይናንስ፣ በማርኬቲንግ ማኔጅመንት አስተማማኝ ትምህርት ይገቢውና ራስዎንና ሀገሮን ይለውጡ። አድራሻ 22 አደባባይ ወደ ሾላ በሚወስደው መንገድ ላይ ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ ህልሞን እውን ያደርጋል።
So these are what he calls them the foreign policy tools, and today we strongly discuss those because these are very important concepts. And then even they can go with our current global situation. So you can have that. Sermons is a diplomatic term. Yeah, Kudus is coming. It's really a diplomatic term. Moral suasion, like persuasion or even encouragement. It's not like, it's neither carrot nor stick, but a kind of ideological encouragement. Opposed to like force or really compulsion. But if the sermon may not work, sometimes they may go to the carrot component or the carrot tools or tools related or considered as sticks. Anyway, what matters is the power. The power that comes with having a positive image or reputation in the international system. It's really highly affected, or that can also be considered a foreign policy tool. A nation may not use stick, it may not use carrot, even it may not use sermon, but it may have some kind of positive image or reputation within the international environment or in the international diplomatic world that can also help us in a categorical foreign policy tool. For instance, it says, being an honest broker within the international systems, like negotiator that can stop war between two blocs, let's say, or some disputes, or even some being a moral leader, seeking to help, like resolving some regional conflicts. It can be a very good example to really consider as the power that can give a positive image and ultimately considered as a politically influential tool. A very good example, I tried to snapshot one material for your better understanding. The case of Norway. Norway is really successful to act as an honest broker, even moral leader, especially the Oslo Accord and the ethnic conflict in Sri Lanka. In dealing with these two things, leaders of Norway are highly successful in this regard. I don't know, maybe they have related with what you call it, the Nobel Prize winners, that they have the tradition of resolving things peacefully, by the way. Not only Norway, most of the Scandinavian countries, they really surprised or get surprised when countries enter into conflict. A very good example is a country where I did one of my masters, Copenhagen or Denmark. Initially, the government of Denmark was strongly establishing a nuclear station. And ultimately, once it's completed, it is the citizens of Denmark, they say that we don't need nuclear station, and they push the government to really remove that station and to work peacefully with other countries. So they have this kind of tradition. For example, Norway, it is the government or the leaders of Norway, they took the lead to resolve the Middle East conflict with what you call it the Oslo Accord. It is a remarkable accord or agreement or protocol or proposal that is not even forgotten in centuries. And they also mediate a bloodshed ethnic conflict in Sri Lanka like that. By the way, Scandinavian countries, they tried to deal the South Sudanese case, but the great powers, they have huge economic and geopolitical interest. They immediately seize out and they immediately left. Still, they are really dealing with some of the issues even in the African continent. So this is what you call it, the power. For example, Norway, of course, it has a very good oil composition and then somehow knowledge export. But if there is what you call it, man of somehow like who could be a moral leader, who could be a good broker on this regard, normally the Norwegians and the Swedish and like that, they really come to in the front in the international arena. So let's see one by one. So what are the tools? We said the sticks, the carrots, and the sermons. So when you say the sticks, it means like military and economic tools. Normally, it is a realistic perspective. If you remember chapter 1 and chapter 2, there are different perspectives. The idealist perspective of crafting foreign policy, the realist perspective. So the realist perspective is a very good example that recommend either military or economic tools. So when you say realist perspective influences this perspective, so writers and current really experts on this area, they strongly influence many global political leaders, and these realists strongly agree and advise that the states must secure their interests by military power. They say having military power is a key issue. We cannot deny. They say that others can be like secondary, like negotiation, all these things. Even you will be successful in negotiation, you will be successful in carrots and sermon component if and only if you have a strong military power. They believe on this one. It means military power is a very good bargaining power within the crafting of international policy like that. So since there is no common power, it says their argument why they say like that, there is no common power. There is no what they call it a global governance. There is no common power or central government, and even no solid agreement on rules governing the global system. Some countries should use force, they say. There should be some boss anyway, they are saying. So if the world is bossless, and finally even the world may really kill its own system. So other military tools like through military assistance or military aid or military assistance, it can be even sharing intelligence capacity or sharing intelligence. If there is some danger or intelligence, they can have an agreement on this one, so they can really assist them like sticks. And then even in terms of creating alliances, in terms of supporting military research, for example, in terms of military tools, they can really enforce by it's not only just by forcing them, do this or don't do that. They do it indirectly by helping others. But for example, if USA wants to fulfill its interest, let's say in Southern Sudan or in Somalia, the US military may not directly engage into that. So they really support others in the form of military aid or in the form of sharing intelligence in the Horn of Africa, or they may create for the Horn, creating alliance, even in the form of military research. They can really apply that stick on like that, even in terms of technological innovations or like that. So it says, sometimes the decision to employ, sometimes the decision sometimes the decision to employ a weapon system, it can be sticked, for example, in diplomatic use, Yeah, I hope you got it, sir. Even if these things may not even diplomats even to use. Sometimes the decision, I already said this, a very good example is this one, how George W. Bush supported the development and even the advancement as well as the deployment of ballistic missile defense system, especially in Eastern Europe, to defend Europe against missiles from Iran, because or terrorist groups in the Middle East. To do this, George W. Bush really strongly helped them to do this one. Even perhaps fearing the growing US power and even influencing the region even to grow, even to protect somehow the Russian government and like that. So what's the response? The Russian government saw the installation of such defense system as a menace, like a Tunkosa or like that, like an initiation even to really, it has some repercussion. Imagine crossing Atlantic Ocean and putting a ballistic missile defense system amid Eastern Europe for the sake of protecting these countries from Iran and even some developing Middle East countries. That will be a menace to Russia's foreign policy. So, in response to this, later, since they have this fear, later the Obama administration offered the Russian a carrot. It's therefore Obama offered Russians a carrot by declining to build the missile defense system. So they really come. You see, it is the result of what you call it stick to diplomacy. Now, Russian support of rebels in Ukraine, even the annexation of Crimea has caused some concerns even among some ballistic nation states, and even the United States has responded with grants of military support from NATO. Anyway, directly what we are saying is that these sticks, it can be expressed in terms of military, and then somehow they have their own economic repercussion, but this military can be in terms of all this. For example, ballistic missile systems, it requires huge technological innovations. Even a kind of alliance, you can see how the Russia tried to respond to that way. And finally, how US tries to use some of the allies that are from NATO, because the North Atlantic Treaty Organization is not only American groups, but also other ally groups are really there. So it's a very good example that you can see that. Still, when you see military tools, remember, there is one important concept that you have to understand. It doesn't mean that all military interventions and military-related supports and tools are successful. It doesn't mean that all are successful. Unfortunately, it says that spending scarce national resources on military spending may not guarantee even national safety and security. For example, America enjoys military hegemony, means military upper hand in the world today. And usually it spends more of its military than any other nation state compared to even other nation states. You can see the figure here. If you see this figure, almost how America really says share of military expenditure of the 15 states. Yes, I'm starting with the largest expenditure now. Why I stress 2014? It is a secret, by the way. I cannot tell you how the military expenditure looks like in 2019, 2020, but you can really guess based on this, because it's truly really a security issue, and it's not as such open data. I tried to get 2012, 2000, yeah, that's there, but truly this is a very good projection. If you see military expenditure, for example, Saudi Arabia is almost 34% of its national. It's really for military. Russia is somehow 12%. you can see how it's really increasing. Even the smallest is, I hope, related to this one, like Turkey and others. Now, Turkey is totally different. It's really increasing because of the pressures related to the Syrian crisis. So, like that. So, the sale of weapons by private actors and even many states has created real security challenges for the entire world. So, how the exchange and how the sale really increasing really matters. This spending, sometimes it may create what you call a security dilemma. We will see, we will discuss it later. A country may interfere in other regions or countries, like securing peace and stability or order, but indirectly, knowingly or unknowingly or consciously or unconsciously, this intervention may create instability in that country, in that destination country. Let's say if South Sudan, if country X, or if Britain or UK enter South Sudan, for the sake of creating South Sudan, that may have backfire and it may create another instability problem. And this is called the security dilemma or the peace dilemma. Even later, they tried to twist it, not only just individually, they try to use it in terms of available common allies or common organizations like NATO. For example, NATO has expanded its mandate to address the wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, or Syria. Initially, it was a concern of America or like that. Finally, the country takes to be the concern of NATO and that, like that. So it's very, very important to read this one. You can read how NATO played a role and which countries were really trying to really follow that one. And finally, the issue of the cyber warfare, it really becomes a challenge. It's not only military warfare, but also the question, what you call it, the cyber warfare, how Russia even used frequent cyber attacks to the Eastern European countries that were happily, strongly supported by America, like Estonia and Georgia, even to weaken this influence and their subjugation to other countries. So this influence. So those would call them on power border. Eastern Europe is really a great power border between some influential European countries and US on the other hand, and then Russia, and then that you call it the Chinese as well as India on the other hand. So in this case, cyber attacks would be very, very, very high. It's not only from military attacks to states to cyber attack. Things are really going on. So far, we have seen the military stakes related to military. Stakes related to economic tools. These economic tools or economic stakes, we call them economic sanctions. When you say economic sanction, it's a tool of statecraft that tries to get a state to behave by coercion of a monetary kind. And this monetary kind, it may include like freezing some banking assets, some of the banks in that country, let's say some of the banks in Ethiopia, or some of the rich persons, I don't know, some of the influential ones in Ethiopia may have some amount of money somewhere, then that country will be forced to freeze banks, even to cut aid programs or article support programs, even to ban trade agreements. This can be some of the sticks that countries use in their foreign policy in the form of economic sanctions. Another economic tool next to economic sanction is what we call it the arms embargo. Arms embargo means stopping the flow of arms from one country to another. This flow will not be a free flow, but countries really may purchase it. A very good example is the time when Somalia invaded Ethiopia during the time of Mengistu Haile Mariam. Ethiopia has paid huge amount of money to purchase dollar from the US, but the US ultimately, it declined even after receiving the money. And then we were totally invaded, and thanks for some of the Cubans and later even some of the Russians, they support that. This time, I think the existence of Ethiopia was really good. That was really a very good example for arms embargo, because Mengistu was really requested not to follow that political ideology, and then because of that, stopping its arms to the army. Especially, this would be very dangerous, especially if the country do not have its own port. The current situation of Ethiopia is a very good example. Even donor status, even development assistance, development as for donor states, for example, development assistance amounts of pursuing foreign policy objectives. Please understand this always this way. They may say that we are donors, but these days many are saying don't say donor, say it a development partner or like that. But if they are donors, they are donors. We should not really hide it, you know. These for donor status, they consider like development assistance. We are providing development or DA. Like that, definitely we as international foreign policy students should understand that is really a means of foreign policy, pursuing for entertaining foreign policy objectives in that destination country. Please always be skeptical and be really what's behind this support. What is really behind this support? For example, Jack Ma is really the Chinese, Vietnam, and other countries are, of course, it's a humanitarian assistance. These days, following COVID, they are really providing. Do you think it's really totally, really that much free anyway? You can relate with the current context. So in this regard, there are a number of questions that can be raised. Really, as an international foreign policy student, can you really mention some of the forms of foreign assistance? Okay, now these days, foreign assistance is really becoming very important. We call it, don't say as foreign, it makes us far from you, they say, but you can call it development assistance or foreign assistance, all the same. Can you mention some of the forms of foreign assistance? I hope you can mention them. So let's see these forms of foreign assistance, the carrots, we call them really the carrots. Now we're on the sticks, we can deal with the carrots. Forms of foreign assistance, yeah. Foreign assistance within the international perspective can be classified into 5 forms. Normally, countries have 5 different forms of foreign assistance. The first one is considered as project aid. Project aid is normally meant for supporting that country of interest. And this aid can be a grant, it's a total gift, 100% gift, or it can be a loan, but when it's a loan, provided with low interest loan, to a country, or it can be an NGO for a specific project. This is what we call it project aid. The other is what we call it the program aid. The second one is program aid. Program aid is normally given to governments or countries to create like certain policy conditions in the recipient country. For instance, in the case of opening market, or even for supporting the BOP deficit, the balance of payment deficit. If the balance of payment deficit is really going bad, that country will be very weak. So a weak country will be approached by many other competitor countries. For example, if Ethiopia is getting weaker in terms of its balance of payment problem, deficit definitely annually around 12 billion US dollar. I can say that that's deficit. So a country who wants to make this country like a friend and to be an open market for future companies or future operations, definitely it has to support. If not, the country will be collapsed. So this is what we call it the program aid. Remember, the program aid or the project aid. The program aid is totally aligned with some policy conditions, whereas the project is totally aligned with a specific project. The problem that's happening in Ethiopia, where many of the international foreign supporters are really crying and shouting over Ethiopian ministries, is that sometimes the government really gets for program aid and it will take the project, and sometimes we project there a program aid. And because of this, we have developed a very big badwill, and because of this, Ethiopia as a country is really losing a lot of millions of dollars support. Just because of what? Just because of misunderstanding these two terms, by the way. It's not easy. If it's a program aid, we have to know where it will be made. If it is a project aid, we have to understand where it's related. And then they say, what's your problem? For example, if you ask the British International Development Agency, the USAID, all the German GIZ, the Japan JICA, the Swedish and the Norwegian, like NORAD, all this, if you ask them, and the Belgian VLIR, and then a number of Flemish aid programs, the Dutch of Germany, and then the NORAD, of or Norway, you can say they'll tell you that the Ethiopian government and its offices in ministries, they really never understand what we are working for. And they repeatedly provide training on this one. So really, it's very important what type of assistant. Definitely, you as my intelligent students, you can contribute on this regard. For example, in terms of providing some sort of training for those organizations and governmental offices to secure that international aid. And then there is a big training which is called International Project Aid Administration. This program aid, it has its own sophisticated level of administration. If you administer it perfectly, it means that you develop a very good will and a nice reputation so that our country will get adequate level of assistance, okay? The other important, the third foreign assistance is categorized into under technical assistance. Technical assistance normally provides a country with technicians, or it can be equipment, or it can be what you call it, sort of both of them, installation and in a given policy area. A very good example is the integrated maternal service. The other is like integrated land use planning or like that. And through that, you can really explore which type of land to be allocated where. For example, Addis Ababa really requires this type of assistance this time. And many Ethiopian cities really require this because here they put the industry and like you can check, for example, Borelemi Industry Park. Of course, Borelemi is a big park and it looks like 10 years ago or even 7 years ago, it was considered to be out of the city. Now it's in the city, you know. If you drive, the city is expanding. So sometimes all these things really require interesting technical support and technical assistance. Of course, they need also funding. The other type of foreign assistance is what you call it the humanitarian assistance, or it's also called disaster assistance. It's normally provides those who really engage in this assistance. They provide states funds, can be for food or material or medicine or even other basic supplies. So, and the fifth one is what you call it the military aid, or we call it the security aid. And this is usually given to partners or allies in programs like the war on terrorism, or even countries who may participate in the UN peacekeeping activities or like that. So these are the 5 major forms of foreign assistance, and that is really recognized as a foreign policy strategic tool, we can call it. So still, the foreign assistance, if you see with data, you can see what are the top 10 foreign aid donors, maybe for your curiosity. You can get here, the rank is here, the first rank. The country is here. They communicate not in million or like in billion. For example, USA, it's like annually like around 32 billion US dollar economic aid. The United Kingdom this month, Germany, France, Japan, Sweden, Netherlands, Norway, Australia, Canada. These are the top 10 foreign assisters, or what you call them, the assistant groups. For example, if you take USA, normally majority of the United States foreign assistance will be provided by the United States Aid for International Development. It's called USAID. And USAID normally has some 30 goals. Imagine with the goals of 30. During the time of Clinton, these goals are summarized into 5 groups. And this assistance will be categorized with either with the provision of human relief, or with the stabilization of population growth, or with the promotion of democracy, or with the promotion of environmental protection schemes, and with even economic growth or related issues. I hope you got what I mean in this regard, yeah? Economic growth. So with this, countries can really benefit a lot. I can say you can judge, for example, how countries are really involving on this in this perspective. So remember, we were discussing what are the tools of international policy tools. We tried to see the sticks, second the carrots, and the third one is what we call the sermons. Sermons are diplomatic messaging or diplomatic messengers or message, and even the utilization of public media. I really said it. Remember that military and economic sticks, they address material interest, but sermons others what? The ideal interest. However, that foreign policy will be successful with the amalgamation or with the conjugation of both the ideal interest and the material interest. So sermons are married to the ideal interest. Remember, sermons may include what you call it demarches or simply like warnings, kind of positive warnings. Of course, it is this warning. If this positive warning is not well respected, it will be established with some kind of stick. Even directives, this can be expressed in terms of or we call it the position statements sent to governments as a form of even moral suasion. Moral suasion means moral persuasion, like immoral data like normally, even in traditional sense, as usual, diplomacy plays a critical role in the preservation of peace and even global order. However, these days, many diplomatic historians, they are explaining that diplomacy is considered as a lost art. It's not like we are not really using effectively a assumption. It's a lost art that's really undermined by advanced communication, because rather than going for diplomacy, the role of diplomacy, the attention toward provided diplomacy is wrongly really being replaced by advanced communication system, even summit meetings like European Summit, like Africa Summit, like Global Summit or G8 Summit or G20 Summit, and even the increasing importance of international and global organizations, and even the demand of the global media industry. You know, if you see, the demand of the global media industry is totally really becoming shrewd and then really changing. So the demand of the global media industry is normally and is persistently and even continuously looking for what? Looking for information and being like feeling like courageous by exposing, we are exposing this diplomacy or this government did this, we are exposing, or like secret agreements. If you see the mainstream media is totally flooded with that thing, which is nonsense, by the way. The media really should really play a better role for the work of even diplomacy, and countries, they should also support this traditional and then conventional diplomacy, but this is not really happening. So because of what? Because of the wrong demand or the wrong, I mean, you can say wrong or right, for me it's wrong. It's really the demand of the global media, and because of the increasing advanced communications and even increasing frequencies of summit meetings, and even the rising importance of international, regional, international and global organizations, normally the work or the tradition of diplomacy is really dwindling, or really it's considered as a lost, because a lost art. It's a very nice art, but it's really lost. And this is a question, and then the effect and the cost of this loss will be seen soon. And I think we are also looking at, we are looking how the media is really trying to disintegrate the world. So if you wanted to really improve global diplomacy, which is a very important component of sermons, and sermons are actually what? They are foreign policy tools. They are foreign policy tools. If you wanted to really improve foreign diplomatic acts and processes, governments of the world, they should really minimize their reliance or dependence on these things, and they should capacitate the global media to be somehow an independent media, free from driven by corporate driven, አብዛኞቹ በኮርፖሬት ኢንተረስት የሚነዱ ናቸው። ኦል ላይክ ዛት። እንደዛ ካልሆነ የግሎባል ዲፕሎማሲ ኢሹ በዓለም ላይ በጣም ክራይሲስ ውስጥ እየገባ ወደ ጥያቄ ውስጥ እየገባ ምናልባትም ዓለምን ወዳልሆነ አቅጣጫ ውስጥ ሊመራት ይችላል። Because that crisis is also fueled by what? Fueled by the corporate demand of global media industry. So, if this diplomacy was not called as a lost art, then what was original mission of diplomacy task or diplomatic task? They say they means the historians, traditional diplomatic historians. According to traditional diplomatic historians, diplomacy normally performs four important functions. The first important function of a diplomatic act or diplomacy is even smoothing and lubricated communications among actors. The second one is negotiation. The third one is participation in regional and international organization. And the fourth one is promotion of trade and other economic interests. So let's say if Ethiopia is successful in terms of sermons or diplomacy, are we really doing this? Do we have this? Do you have this? Are we really successful in this regard? በአግባብ መመለስ ያስፈልገናል ማለት ነው። Okay, I think this is the fourth, I think the third important tool in international or in foreign policy, among foreign policy tools. I think you can read that. The other thing is, when you say normally, we have been repeatedly saying diplomacy, but really, what's really diplomacy? Diplomacy is normally a step-by-step procedure, or this is a process by which international actors communicate as they seek to resolve conflicts. But remember, these conflicts are not only wars, ideal conflicts or ideological conflicts, without going to war and even finding solutions to fix some complex global problems. So anyway, we can have different types of diplomacy. You can have economic diplomacy or like that. One important feature of diplomacy is just the public diplomacy. When we say public diplomacy, it means the use of media, internet, and other cultural outlets to communicate the message to the state. And even the coercive diplomacy is there, like the use of diplomatic and military methods together, if one works and then the other, really. Like you can use diplomatic and military methods so that you can force the state to really accept what the proposal of the other powerful state. And these methods may include like the threat of force and mobilization of military around the area. And gradually this may really what you call it, turn the screw, like but there is no actual use of force. This is what you call it coercive diplomacy. So the implication of coercive diplomacy is that war is the next step if diplomacy fails. Message. Anyway, there are different types of powers in terms of when we are dealing with the issue of diplomacy. Power really matters, and this power can be classified in hard power and soft power. Like hard power in diplomatic language means like the material traits and inducements that leaders usually deploy or employ to achieve their goals of their interest. Whereas the soft power means influence and authority derived from the attraction that a country's what you call it, the political, social, and economic ideas, as well as beliefs in practice have over the people living in other countries. So generally, what I have seen in the second part of chapters is that foreign policy strategies and tools. At least I told you at least what are some of the possible tools that the countries are really using. The last, but still the most important part of, among the most important part of chapter 3 is the foreign policy styles and tradition. When we say foreign policy style, it usually reflects or it's usually the result of how a country deals with other members in that international community. So what's the foreign policy style of, let's say, Djibouti, or what's the foreign policy style of, let's say, Kenya, even like that. The how question is a very question, and we need some kind of narration. However, when a given foreign policy style, it becomes, it continues for a longer period of time, that will be called the foreign policy tradition. So remember, with all the policies, the foreign policy strategies and the foreign policy tools that we have discussed before, they can be made within the framework of what? Within the framework of this foreign policy styles and foreign policy strategies. Countries with the same power, they may have what? Different foreign policy strategy and foreign policy style. And this strategy and style may be the result of the five external determinants of foreign policy making and the 10 internal determinants of foreign policy. So that's the fusion of all these, they can contribute to this one. So this may result, normally a tradition includes like national beliefs about how the world works. For example, how is the national belief of Kenya about the world power, and the national belief that Ethiopia has about the global power? It may not be the same. Anyway, the belief, how the world works and what leaders must do in line with that. So ultimately, the question of all this discussion, the question of just having a kind of a certain acceptable level of policy style and tradition is what? Is just to secure national interests. What type of foreign policy style and foreign policy tradition will be helpful for, let's say, our country to secure our national interests? That's a very, very important thing. So we are really discussing all these things, not in a vacuum, but in the world where that world is flooded and filled up with countries considered like great power, countries considered middle power, and countries that small states. We are really dealing with foreign policy making, but in reality, the whole world is filled up with these three major groups of powers. What strategy to follow by which states really depends on the type of that country, Is that country is under the great power? Is it in the middle power or small power? What strategy to follow by which states? It depends on this. So as a student of international relations, do you think power gives rise to responsibility? If a country is more powerful, the expectation is that she has, or that country can have the power really to maximize the common global goods, the common global agenda for the majority of the population, okay? This is what I call it global responsibility, or like that. Do you think power gives rise to responsibility? I doubt on that. Should powerful states be expected to the right world's wrong, or to right the world's wrongs? For example, do you expect that powerful countries have the right really to really have the interest to fix the wrong things in the world, and even in really, do you also expect these countries to solve the world's problems? Because if they are powerful, definitely, if you can see COVID, those powerful countries, if they really show power, and then anyway, these are the key questions, and they are really very hard to answer. Anyway, I want your reflection on this one, but I know you are inundated with some connection problems and other things, so I don't want to bother you on this regard. So when we talk about foreign policy styles and traditions, from the perspective of this power, middle power, great power and small power, there is what you call it, the acquiescent strategy. You have to know as a student of this course. Acquiescent strategy normally is a foreign policy strategy in which a state differs, differ means when you say differ means I differ my interest ካልኩኝ I postpone my interest or I submit my interest to your interest or I subdue my interest to your interest. States may subdue ሊያስገዙ ይችላሉ። ለምሳሌ የኢትዮጵያ ኢንተረስት በአሜሪካ ኢንተረስት ውስጥ የሚሟላ ባይሆንም that's really follow a market strategy or simply accepts to the interest of a major power. So most of the lower power or low power strategies follow this one. Even powerful states, they can go for this one. For example, if America has a kind of proposal, even the proposal for the whole world to be dominated, and then if it requests Russia, please let's do this one, even if Russia may have some sort of discomfort, but for the sake of that great power, Russia may defer its interest to the interest of the other bigger power. This is really happening, what's being done. For example, when America and when other countries are really doing on Libya and like that, so Russians, they simply express their position. They don't want to really engage much with the debate to the. Even they say that, okay, go ahead, but I will explain my interest to the global community. Okay, no problem, or like that. The other strategy is what we call it the preservative strategy. When I say preservative strategy is a foreign policy targeted at preserving or really maintaining power and even status in the international system. This preservative strategy, they really work not to lose that one. The other one is a promotive strategy, the promotive foreign policy. The promotive foreign policy, it normally that promotes, works on the promotion of values, okay, on the promotion of values and interests of a state. And the task is even to seek and even create international system and based on these values. So like promotive strategy, they do their level best to promote the interest of countries, let's say in the UN system, in the international, in the World Bank system, in the system related like WHO or like that. So this is what I call it, the promotive foreign policy. The other thing is intransigent foreign policy. It is a foreign policy that challenges the rules of established by great powers or rule-making states. Some countries may really follow intransigent foreign policy. In their foreign policy, they may challenge the existing global power relation, and they say that, no, who makes America and Russia to be the power boss, the boss of the world? And they may really reflect in a more diplomatic sense on this regard, and this type of foreign policy is called intransigent foreign policy. For example, the case of Ethiopia, there are some components related to this one, but mainly in relation to its affiliations to really protect the country and the origin from what you call it, quote unquote, the global terrorism, and the minimization of some countries' hegemony in utilizing the Nile River and natural resource bases. But I think that, however, there are still continuous issues related to other types of strategies, what you call it the adaptive strategy. Adaptive strategy normally changes in foreign policy behavior. The countries which follow this strategy, they frequently change their foreign policy behavior in reaction to or as a response to some changes in the international order or in the international system, or even following some international events, so that they need to adjust their national goals and to conform the effects of that external threat to that state. Anyway, these are some of the issues that can be either promoted either by middle power, high power, or even small power states. So since we mentioned them, really, what are the focus areas of this great power foreign policy? Great power foreign policy, why do you discuss this? Directly or indirectly, we cannot be out of the influence of these powers or these issues. So when it says a great power foreign policy, their key agenda is survival. Survival is primary goal, a primary goal, and they are really mostly pragmatic than academic saying. For example, many academicians, and then in normative sense, in principle, they say like freedom of power, free trade, or even separation of power between the parliament and the implementer or the policy. I mean, the legislation, the legislative body, which is the parliament, and the executive organs, they should be separation. In practice, አይደለም እነዚህ ሀገሮች ጋር. So it's not like academics saying means they are more pragmatic. They can use force, whatever like that. So their concern is how to survive. When you say survive, it doesn't mean like, when you say survive for developing countries and survive for great powers, totally different. When you say survive for great powers, it means not to lose their power dominance, not to lose the current status quo. Their really concern is how to survive in a system where all states are really potential threats. They consider all threats as their own potential threats. So how do we really survive with this? So they say that there is no friend. Things are really depending on them. There is no permanent enemy, and they say there is no permanent ally. So things may change. So they really assume ceteris paribus means keeping other things constant. The major points or the major issue or the pillar for foreign policy for those great power is that they consider other countries like a threat, but they don't express that you are a threat, but they really devise from that perspective. When you say survive, it means to survive in a more dominating world. It's not like when they survive like Djibouti or Kenya. So their goal is, the goal of great powers in their foreign policy is advancing economic and political interests. They never separate them, okay? So what do this? They do all their level-based, especially in terms of maintaining the rules of the game in many international institutions in their own interest. For example, it can be UN, it can be whatever. They can really influence on this regard. A very good examples are like the USA and its allies. Normally, the only challenge I can really safely say is that it's coming from the Soviet Union. And then since that this challenge may come, if the two are really creating a challenge, we call it the bipolar. ሁለት ፖላር የሆነ ነገር ሊፈጠር ስለሚችል ቻሌንጅ በጣም እየጨመረ ይላል። ስለዚህ what do? They really deal with either G8 or G20, and they usually meet once a year to debate best ways. So ይሄ ሁሉ ምንድነው እነሱ እንዳይጣሉና ወዳልሆነ ነገር እንዳይሄዱ ወደ ክራይስ እንዳይገባ የተሰሩ ስራዎች ናቸው እንጂ ባለም ላይ ምንም just a kind of what they are G8 and G20 are nothing. They are really forums for debating in a best way to respond to various global challenges such as security and other issues. However, this security and other discussions, they may result STD. STD means what we call a security dilemma. Security dilemma means it's anarchic international system, and this system is with no common central power, when one state may seek to really improve its security, its interest from the perspective of security. While it's just fulfilling security, it may create insecurity in other states. And this situation is what I call it, the security dilemma, which I told you also before. So far we have seen the great powers, and then when it comes to the middle power foreign policy, when we talk about the middle power foreign policy, though the middle powers, most of them are actually they are liberal thinkers, liberal states, and mostly they believe in the social democratic political systems. A very good example is like Germany, and their survival and prosperity normally depends. They believe that their survival and prosperity depend not on hegemony and dominance, but it really depends on global stability and order. According to middle power foreign policy, middle power states, they say that our success and survival is highly dependent on the level of global stability and global order they have. So they will do their level best, for example, to create peace in Africa, to create peace everywhere, okay? These examples like Canada, Australia, and even the Nordic countries are very good examples. And normally they follow a niche diplomacy. A niche means something in between the high powers and the low powers is one. Niche diplomacy is, for example, something that is not touched by great powers, so they really touch it. For example, the great powers, they may really focus on what you call it, the global security and global terrorism, and others, they make liberalization of markets or like that. These are really liberalization of market issues, and then the global security issues like global terrorism, like the bigger powers focus ያደርጋሉ. But in between ምን አለ? For example, the environment issue. So these middle power countries, they really enter into some environmental issues because environmental issue is highly related with natural resource degradation. If natural resource is degraded, they believe that there will not be peace and stability. If the resource of one area is degraded, people really migrate to another country or other region or other village. And when they are migrating, they really fight for a common resource, a common land, fertile land. When this really fight comes, then great powers interfere. When great powers interfere, some powers may be interested for the sort of weapons and like that. At this time, that area is totally unstable, which means it's not unstable. It means against the interest of middle power. In this case, they are really relating what? The middle powers, they relate, for example, conflict, global conflict is the result of climate change. I tell you this one. I have a lot of projects on this. Conflict, ዓለም ላይ የሚከሰተው conflict አብዛኛው የሪሶርስ ዲፕሌሽን እና ግሎባል ወይም ደግሞ የክላይሜት ቼንጅ ነው። ምክንያቱም when the climate is changing, when the ecology is changing, people, they don't want to live in their own grandfather area and like that because land is degraded and the environment will not be comfortable. So people from this non-comfortable area, they want to resettle to a better comfortable area. So they really create a conflict with the recipient community. ብዙ ነገር ዲስከስ ያደርጋሉ። So these countries, if you go, for example, Nordic countries and like that, they are really good in terms of providing funding support for research like natural resource. For example, any ብዙ project አግኝቻለሁ እዚህ like the IFS, International Forum for Science. I have some support to do some of my research in Benishangul Gumuz region, and even some of my research in Oromia, in Amara, in Tigray, even in some parts of Afar area. So really, there are a number of donors on this area. So the first interesting thing is, you may indirectly, ብዙ ነገር ሚስትሪ እየነገርኳችሁ ነው by the way. Indirectly, where you are, for example, applying for fund, really what is their interest? They really express their interest on their project code, but you have to know what is that country. Is it a great power country or is it a middle power country? And what is really a big interest on this one? So niche diplomacy ላይ ፎከስ ያደርጋል። niche diplomacy አንዱ ካራክተራይዝ የሚያደርግበት ደግሞ አንድ normative orientation አላቸው. They don't want to quarrel with everybody. For example, climate change መቀነስ አለብን ወይም ደግሞ we have to minimize land degradation. የመሬት conservation ይሰራ ቢባል ማንም አይቃወም. It's a normative. So they really work on this ማያነካኩ issues like promoting certain norms and values. For example, the ecological rights or the right of indigenous people, or even the animal rights, the wildlife rights, the wildlife rights. What is the right of folks, let's say, in Seven Mountain? Up to this, they really led with that. So, in describing the importance of behavioral measures, especially for middle powers, Cooper, Hugot, and Nozal የሚባሉ በጣም well-known writers on this international relation and foreign policy ላይ የሰሩ ናቸው። እነዚህ middle powers በጣም መበረታታት ያለባቸው. We have to encourage these middle powers and really favor them. If these middle powers are not found in the world, the whole will be totally at chaos ብለው ያምናሉ። በጣም እነዚህ ሚድል ፓወር የሚባሉ ስቴቶች ባይኖሩና ከነሱ ጋር መስራት ባይቻል ብዙ ግሎባል ፕሮብሌምስ ሊከሰቱ ይችላሉ እና ምን ይሏቸዋል? እኚህ ሚድል ፓወርስ በሶስት ዲፈረንት ካታጎሪስ ወይም ደግሞ በሶስት ዲፈረንት ኳሊቲስ ይገልጻቸዋል። ሚድል ፓወርስ they are really catalysts for the world ይላሉ። These middle powers are catalysts, meaning states that provide resources and expertise to take leadership role in global initiatives. If you see, I remember, for example, one of the university in Ethiopia, ከ42 በላይ PhD በአንድ የኖርዌያን ፕሮጀክት የተሰራበት ሁኔታ እንዳለ አውቃለሁ። Even facilitators, they are also considered as facilitators. They state that facilitators will be considered as, why they call them facilitators? Because these middle states, they play active role in setting agenda. ለምሳሌ በግሎባል ኢሹ ላይ ኢንቫይሮንመንት ተረስቷል፣ ሁማኒታሪያን ተረስቷል። አሁን ራሱ በኮቪድ-19 ዲስከሽን ላይ በምታዩበት ጊዜ ይሄ ሁሉ የተከሰተው ነገር የዓለም አቀፍ ህብረተሰብና ዓለም አቀፍ መንግስታት የጤናውን ሴክተር ኔግሌክት አድርገው ቶታሊ ወደ ኮመርስ እና አዘር ሴክተሮች ላይ ፎከስ አድርገዋል የሚል ብሌም አላቸው። ስለዚህ አሁን ዓለም ላይ ራሱ ለኮቪድ ለሚደረገው ሪስፖንስ የነዚህ ሀገሮች አጀንዳ ማስቀመጥ በጣም ትልቅ ሮል የሚጫወቱበት ሁኔታ አለ ማለት ነው። And then they are really responsible to set global agendas in global policy discussions and even building coalitions for collaborative response. They really work. For example, if America says, I have to contribute like $10 billion, no, they say that, so they are really playing smooth roles. We call them global lubricant states, by the way. Some writers, and that's their lubricant states. They are also managers. These can also be considered as managers. Remember, leaders and managers are different. When we say managers normally, they never use force or like that, but they really set agendas. They really serve as catalysts. Middle powers that support institution building at the international level and encourage support of existing international organizations and multinational activities. By doing so, these middle powers are considered as the middle powers in foreign policy. So, if we want to craft and evaluate, let's say if we want to craft a new policy and if you want to evaluate our own existing policy, from which could be our potential partners, huge environmental degradation, huge resource depletion, military don't expect that these countries will help us. So, who will be our friends? Who will be our targets? The other thing is, the third category is what we call small state foreign policy. Small state foreign policy, they are characterized with small, when you say small states they have small land mass, they have somehow little gross national product compared to the global average, and they have somehow smallest population. They usually have large military forces, by the way. Large military forces are, and they usually have resources to have significant impact on global politics. They also identify a niche, some gaps that are not yet exploited in the global foreign policy, and they really build their policy on that one and develop expertise in a given policy area. And for example, most wealthy small states like Belgium, like even Holland or Netherlands, even Spain, like New Zealand, they usually focus their foreign policy on trade and economic issues, on those issues, but still on niches of all these subsectors. I have one interesting example here, which can be really considered as a summary. Remember, even if we have these three major groups of powers, like great powers or superpowers, middle powers, and what you call them small powers, our global power system is really dynamic, and even power is being diffused. For example, a country that was considered a superpower, it may not really have that power even these days, and definitely it may not continue with that power. So what you can say, the current status quo in the knowledge of crafting foreign policy, we should really consider a concept called, we are now even in a non-polar world. This is the conclusion of this chapter. Really, we are in a non-polar world where power is diffused and held by variety of state and non-state actors. For example, we have already only discussed about state actors. there are corporations, international, what you call them, companies that even have greater political and even greater influence in the making of policy in some countries where there is a resource. So please remember that this classification, what you call is the great power, middle power, and lower power, is really still there, but it's not on the status quo. Things are really evolving and really changing. Power is on diffusion, and we are really moving toward this non-polar world where power is diffused against the state actors, even non-state actors, corporations, and international organizations. And this is all about the third chapter. I think I have done with the third chapter. And if you have any question, comment, or suggestion, you are most welcome. If you don't have, I think probably it will be enough for today. And then chapter 4 will be mainly a reading assignment because it's foreign economic policy. I know you are students of international economics, so this foreign economic policy is not new for you. I may touch it for some 20 or 30 minutes, and then you can read on that. So I will proceed next time with some little discussions on this foreign policy chapter, and then I will proceed to chapter 5. Definitely in the coming two classes. I think our class next week is, on Saturday, and no, not Saturday. Next week we will deal with the whole course, and the remaining week will be like a presentation week, a PowerPoint presentation week for your assignments on like that. Please don't stress on your assignments. Try your level based, and then you'll be welcome with whatever you have tried in your capacity. So in chapter 4, definitely we will see some important concepts of what foreign economic policy, like globalization and economic policy. We have to really consider this, the concept of foreign economic policy. When we say foreign economic policy, indirectly we are assuming there is nothing what you call foreign economic. It means foreign trade policy. We have some trade policy and actors, and what the subjects, the types, and the goals, the means of foreign policy, the concepts, and global economic policy. Even if it's a kind of repetition, I may come to some of the instruments in foreign economic policy in chapter 5. Definitely you will like it, and I work on that one. We will discuss over this. If you have question, comment, or suggestion, you are most welcome. I open the forum to all of you, and I unmuted all of you. Question, something is not clear for you, it's welcome. ጥያቄ ካለ ያልገባችሁ ካለ በነገራችን ላይ እስከ ቻፕተር 3 ያለውን አሁን እየተከታተላችሁ ነው። I am attaching it, okay? You can read it, huh? Okay, well done. See you on Tuesday next week. Thank you very much. If you have any question, please let me know with whatever type of media or whatever type of information sharing. And thank you, and I wish you good luck in all your reading and then in your work. Thank you very much.
ልዩነት መፍጠር ዓላማችን ነው። ዓለም አቀፍ ተወዳዳሪ መሆን አለባችሁ። የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ ጥራትና ደረጃውን የጠበቀ ስልጠና በመስጠት ብቁ ዜጋ ያፈራን ነው። በፍላይት ኦፕሬሽን፣ በበረራ መስተንግዶ፣ በቲኬቲንግና ሪዘርቬሽን፣ በሆቴልና ቱሪዝም ሙያዎች አሰልጥነን ተወዳዳሪ እናደርጉታለን። ኮሌጃችን ካናዳ ከሚገኘው ኢንተርናሽናል ኤር ትራንስፖርት አሶሲዬሽን አያታና ከእንግሊዙ ICM ጋር በመተባበር ዓለም አቀፍ ዕውቅና ያለው ስልጠና እየሰጠ ይገኛል። በፍላይት ኦፕሬሽን፣ በበረራ መስተንግዶ የምንሰጣቸው ስልጠና ከኢትዮጵያ ሲቪል አቪዬሽን ባለስልጣን ሙሉ ዕውቅና አለው። አድራሻ ከጎላጉል ታወር 22 አደባባይ ወደ ሾላ በሚወስደው መንገድ ላይ የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ ህልሞን